Today is Paul McCartney's birthday. He is 83 years old. He is still writing songs. He is still playing live. He has been doing this since 1957, 69 years of music, and he has not stopped. The world knows the hits. It knows the Beatles. It knows Yesterday and Let It Be and Hey Jude. What it doesn't know as well is the life behind those songs. The mother he lost at 14. The song that came to him in a dream and changed everything. The breakup that was blamed on him for 50 years for something he didn't do. The wife he cried over for a year. And the morning in Scotland when the world changed and he stood in a field and couldn't speak. This is the story of Paul McCartney that got left out. Happy birthday, Paul. Paul McCartney's mother was named Mary. Mary Patricia Mohin, a nurse, a midwife, the person who held the McCartney family together. She had worked at the very hospital where Paul was born, Walton Hospital in Liverpool. When she went into labor, she was given a private room because the staff knew her from her years on the maternity ward. Paul was born on June 18, 1942. His father, Jim, was absent. He was a volunteer firefighter during the Second World War and was on duty the night his son came into the world. Mary raised Paul and his younger brother Michael with what everyone who knew her described as quiet, steady love. She was the center of the family, the one who made it work. In 1955, Paul was 13 years old. Mary noticed a lump in her breast. She was a nurse. She knew what it might mean, but she said nothing. She told no one. By the time she was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was too late. Before she went into surgery, she told a close friend, "I don't want to leave the boys just yet." The surgery failed. She died on October 31st, 1956. She was 47 years old. Paul was 14. Jim McCartney was reportedly suicidal after Mary's death. The family heard him crying alone in his room at night, a sound Paul said he never forgot. The first song Paul McCartney ever wrote was called "I Lost My Little Girl." He wrote it shortly after his mother died. He said later, "I don't think the song was about that, but any psychiatrist getting hold of those two bits of information would say it was." He met John Lennon the year after his mother died. Lennon had also lost his mother, killed in a road accident just 2 years later. Two boys from Liverpool who had each lost the most important person in their world, who found in music the only thing that made any of it bearable. That is where the Beatles truly began. Not in a recording studio, not on a stage, in that grief. Both McCartney and Lennon lost their mothers young. Do you think that's where their bond really came from? And why the ending hurt so much? One morning in 1965, Paul McCartney woke up with a song in his head, fully formed. The melody was just there, complete, clear, as if he had always known it. He went straight to the piano and played it. His first thought was that he must have stolen it from somewhere without realizing. He played it to everyone he knew and asked, "Do you recognize this? Have I heard this somewhere?" Nobody recognized it. It was his. For weeks, he played the song with placeholder lyrics. He called it "Scrambled Eggs," literally just those words over the melody, because he needed something to sing while he figured out the real words. Then he found them. "Yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away." The other Beatles didn't play on it. It was recorded with McCartney alone on acoustic guitar, accompanied by a string quartet. No drums, no electric guitars, no rhythm section, just his voice and the melody he had dreamed. John Lennon had doubts about releasing it. He thought it was too soft, too different from what the Beatles were. Yesterday has since become the most covered song in the history of recorded music. Over 3,000 versions, more than any other song ever written. Paul McCartney dreamed it, wrote the words in an afternoon, recorded it in one session. He was 22 years old. Some music writers believe the song, at its deepest level, is about his mother, the loss of something that was there one day and simply gone the next. Why she had to go, I don't know, she wouldn't say. He never confirmed it, but he never denied it either. Yesterday is the most covered song in history. Do you think it's really about his mother, or is that reading too much into it? When the Beatles ended, the world blamed Paul McCartney. For 50 years, the story went like this. McCartney broke up the greatest band in history because of his ego, his ambition, his refusal to let things be. It was not true. John Lennon walked into a room in September 1969 and told the other three, "I'm leaving the Beatles." He asked them to keep it quiet, legal negotiations, business reasons. So the announcement never came from Lennon, it came from McCartney. In April 1970, when he released his first solo album and said he had no plans to work with the Beatles again, the world saw McCartney announce the end. They concluded McCartney caused it. He spent 50 years correcting this, carefully, persistently, never with real bitterness, just the quiet insistence of someone who knows what actually happened. In 2021, at 79 years old, he finally said it plainly. "I didn't instigate the split. That was our Johnny." He added, "It was the most difficult period of my life, not the breakup itself, the blame, carrying the weight of something for 50 years that wasn't his to carry. And yet, through all of it, he never attacked Lennon the way Lennon attacked him." Lennon released How Do You Sleep in 1971, a song directed entirely at McCartney. "The only thing you done was yesterday." McCartney's response was, "Dear friend," quiet, mournful, buried at the end of a Wings album almost nobody heard. Was it 1,000,000 to 1? Was it just a game to you? He said later, "I find it very emotional when I listen to it now. I have to sort of choke it back." Even in the pain of being attacked, McCartney wrote a letter instead of a weapon. Lennon attacked publicly. McCartney replied quietly in a song almost nobody heard. Which do you think was the more honest response? In the autumn of 1968, the Beatles were falling apart. McCartney knew it. He was staying up late, drinking, unable to sleep. The band was fracturing under the weight of everything: money, business, creative disagreement. The exhaustion of 4 people locked together for a decade. One night, in the middle of this, he fell into a fitful sleep. He dreamed of his mother. Mary had been dead for 12 years, but there she was, warm and present and entirely herself. She said to him, "It'll be all right." McCartney said later, "It was so great to see her. You're actually reunited with that person for a second." She was very reassuring. The gist of her advice was, "Don't worry too much, it will turn out okay." He woke up the next morning and wrote the song. "When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be." The world assumed Mother Mary meant the Virgin Mary. McCartney has always been gentle about this. Mother Mary makes it a quasi-religious thing, so you can take it that way. I don't mind. But he has also always been clear. It was his mother, Mary Patricia McCartney, the nurse from Liverpool who died when he was 14. Let It Be was the last single the Beatles ever released. It came out in March 1970, 1 month before McCartney announced he was leaving the band. The song his mother gave him in a dream became the soundtrack to the end of everything she never lived to see him build. And then, 30 years later, Linda McCartney died of breast cancer, the same disease that had taken his mother. At the memorial service, 700 people sang Let It Be together. One song, 2 women, a lifetime between them. His mother died of breast cancer. 30 years later, his wife died of the same disease. And the same song played at both their memorials. Does knowing that change the way you hear Let It Be? Linda McCartney died on April 17, 1998. She was 56 years old. Breast cancer. She and Paul had been together for 30 years. In the music industry, nobody had a marriage like theirs. Paul McCartney, one of the most famous men on earth, refused to travel without his wife. For 30 years, Linda was on every tour, in every recording session, beside him on every stage. Critics sometimes mocked this. They said Linda couldn't really play keyboards, that she was there because Paul wanted her there, not because she belonged. Paul McCartney didn't care what the critics said. He had lost his mother at 14. He was not going to be separated from the person he loved. When Linda was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1995, McCartney threw himself into her treatment, the way he threw himself into everything, completely, without reservation. She died at their ranch in Tucson, Arizona. Paul was with her. He said afterward, "I cried for about a year, on and off. You expect to see them walk in, this person you love, because you are so used to them. I cried a lot. It was almost embarrassing, except it seemed the only thing to do." He added, "Both my mom and Linda died of breast cancer. We had no idea what my mom had died of because no one talked about it. She just died." He said of his father's grief after Mary's death, "You'd hear my dad crying in the next room. It was tragic because we'd never heard him cry. It was a quiet, private kind of grief." And then, 40 years later, Paul McCartney became his father, crying quietly in a room alone, for a woman named Mary who had left too soon. Paul watched his father grieve his mother in silence. 40 years later, he found himself doing the same thing. Is there something in that cycle that changes how you see him? Paul McCartney got the call at his farm in Scotland. December 8, 1980. John Lennon had been shot outside the Dakota Building in New York City. His daughter Stella was there with him that morning. She later described what she saw as the biggest emotional reaction she had ever seen from her father. He walked outside. He stood in the field. He couldn't speak. Later that day, a journalist caught him outside a recording studio in London and asked what he thought of Lennon's death. McCartney said, "It's a drag, isn't it?" The world judged him for it. For decades, people cited that quote as evidence of McCartney's coldness, his inability to feel. They didn't see the field. They didn't see what Stella saw. McCartney said later, "I was completely shocked. We'd had our business differences and our personal differences, and yet I loved the man." He and Lennon had not had a proper conversation in years when Lennon died. There were things between them. The 10 years of fighting, the songs they had written against each other, the friendship before all of it, that had never been resolved, that never got the chance to be resolved. McCartney said, "The saddest thing about it was that it was over. There was no way of communicating with him, no way of picking up the phone and saying, 'Look, John.'" He didn't finish the sentence. He never has. If McCartney had been able to make one last phone call to Lennon, what do you think he would have said? Paul McCartney is 83 years old today. He has outlived his mother, who died at 47. He has outlived his father, who died at 93. So he still has 10 years to beat him. He has outlived John Lennon, who was 40 when he died. He has outlived George Harrison, who was 58. He has outlived Linda, who was 56. He is still here. He played Glastonbury in 2022 at the age of 80. He played for 3 hours. He sang with John Lennon's voice projected on a screen behind him. He wept on stage in front of 200,000 people. He told the New York Times in 2026, "People say, 'Well, why do you still write songs?' And it's just because I love it." The boy who lost his mother at 14, who wrote his first song in grief, who met John Lennon in a churchyard in Liverpool and changed the world, who was blamed for ending something he tried to save, who wrote Let It Be in a Dream about a woman who had been dead for 12 years, who stood in a field in Scotland and couldn't speak, who cried for a year and then kept going, is still here, is still writing, is still playing. Happy birthday, Paul McCartney. 83 years and still going. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. We tell these stories every week, and there are more like this one.